on the 25th of July. I'm Councillor Jill Campbell and I will be your chair for the meeting. Just to let you know, the meeting is being broadcast live on YouTube, and before we start, may I just ask you to switch off your mobile phones or put them on silent. Microphones to be switched off at all times until you're invited to speak, and when you're invited to speak, please introduce yourself. And now I'll just make some introductions, starting with Kirsty.
Kirsty Charlton, Committee Services.
Neil Carter, I'm the solicitor to the committee.
Stephen Reid, I'm the planning manager, Chair.
Graham Lee, Principal Planning Officer, and will be presenting the case today.
Callum Harvey, Senior Planning Officer.
Thank you. And now I think we can start the meeting. Are there any apologies for absence?
Councillor Mary Lynn Franklin and James Stevenson.
Thank you. And do we have any substitute members?
Councillor Ian Catchpole for Councillor Stevenson.
And now, are there any declarations of interest? No? Thank you. We can now get the minutes of the 2nd of July agreed. Do I have a proposer and a seconder? Councillor Bellingham, you're proposing. Councillor Schumann, seconding. Thank you. Minutes approved. Now can move on to the main business. We have one application to be dealt with today, and the officer will now make his presentation.
Thank you very much, Chair. One item today, and this is an application for 99 dwellings to be constructed at land to the west of Gladstone Terrace, Coxo. It also includes a community park and stride in within there as well. The application site itself lies to the north of the A177 roundabout, adjacent to Coxo Primary School to the south, and to the rear of Gladstone Terrace. East Pasture House sits on the western boundary of the application site as the current home of stray dog shelter. The A1M forms the southwestern boundary and with an open field to the north, and the core of Coxo, as can be seen on the screenshot, is to the northeast upwards along Cornforth Lane. Here we have an aerial photograph of the application site confirming its agricultural nature. The A1M is visible in a cutting adjacent to the application site, with the now mostly complete residential development of Bognor Hall Farm to the southeast. This one is the site layout. It indicates vehicular access from the roundabout on the A177 to the south of the site. Wheeled and walking access is also provided to the northeast portion, as indicated on screen, and ultimately between Gladstone Terrace and Barker's buildings. A Suds drainage feature is identifiable on the western boundary, adjoining Strayed, with a landscape mound proposed alongside the A1, that feature there. Finally, the park and stride is provided near the site entrance, which is the L-shaped depiction on the screen there. Next is the proposed landscaping strategy, which highlights the provision of a green space area between the proposed housing and Strayed. That is taken up in part by the proposed drainage basin. Further, the retention of supplementing of the hedge row to the northern boundary is visible, which members will recall from the visit this morning was the second one when viewed from the north. The acoustic bund and the fence to the A1 to the south was pretty much on the alignment of the access to Strayed, which we walked down this morning, and is indicated in profile section below in the inset. Now the site photographs. Members who attended this morning be aware of views across the site back towards the rear of the existing terrace houses along Cornforth Lane. This highlights the relationship between the site and those existing properties and the internal hedgerow within the site. Next, photo taken from within Strayed site, not quite within the compound, but at the entrance complex where we stood this morning. The Suds feature proposed would be the other side of the porta cabins that we see on the screen. Here's a view of the proposed site access point, stood at the roundabout looking back across to the Strayed site. Members remember the bus was parked in the field access this morning. And finally, images taken from that access point from Google Street View showing the parking issues and the disregard for the parking restrictions at school pickup time. Now for the words. In terms of representation on the application, there is one objection from a statutory consultee in the form of the Parish Council around the lack of primary education contribution and lack of residence parking. Councillor Stuart Dunn is present from the parish to speak, and we'll give more detail on these shortly. All of the statutory consultees reported back no objections subject to conditions or informatives where appropriate. Internally, the Council's Neighbourhood Protection Manager has raised concerns over placing housing close to the existing kennel facilities. Their remit is to cover the issue of stray and dangerous dogs in the community, and the presence of new housing close to the facility at Coxer, in their view, puts its future viability at risk, affecting council operations. Other internal consultees have raised no objection subject to conditions, and a total of 33 representations have been received, the majority against the proposals. Those matters summarised on the screen and include things as parking to the rear of Gladstone Terrace and its removal, both the inclusion and its removal, highways and traffic impacts in the local area, the need for new housing, the impacts on residential amenity, things such as design considerations, impacts on the environment and heritage, impacts on the infrastructure such as doctors, schools, etc., and various other considerations which are deemed to be non-material. In support of the application, we have received comments that in respect to the welcome boost to the housing supply, the alleviation of the parking problems that have existed near the school nearby with the Park and Stride facility, as well as that could lead to road safety. The inclusion of affordable housing, including those for older people in the form of bungalows. The use of sustainability measures in the design of the buildings, and also the boost to the local economy and council tax. So to start with summarising this one, the proposals would result in development of a well-contained site that would be read as a natural extension to Coxhill. The schemes would provide an attractive, high-quality layout with significant amenity space and sustainable urban drainage systems, and would integrate existing landscape features where it can. The development would also provide a safe access and layout in highways terms, whilst not adversely impacting on the wider highway network in terms of traffic flows. The scheme itself would provide 15% affordable housing units as a total, and of the overall total, a further 10% would be provided for older persons, again, all in line with policy requirements. The affordable housing carries a significant degree of positive weight, given the shortfall of affordable properties in the county. It also provides policy-required affordable housing as well, which again carries significant weight in favour of the scheme. The development would mitigate its impacts in relation to increased pressure on facilities in the area. It would not harm protected species when delivering the amount of net biodiversity gain. So to conclude, ultimately the site would require a large amount of mitigation for the future residents in order to reduce noise impacts from the current setting and uses. While there still remains impacts from noise, such as the A1 and Strayade, these have been reduced to a sufficient level as to not be considered to have a significant observed effect upon daily lives of future residents. This is in line with paragraph 200 of the MPPF and supporting national guidance. I think I've gone forward too many slides there, apologies, people. That was that particular slide. So finally, in conclusion, they've generated a significant amount of public interest. Concerns regarding the proposal have been taken into account and carefully balanced against the scheme's wider social, economic and public benefits. All of the material considerations have been taken into account in determination of the application and found to be acceptable. The scheme presents a number of positive benefits and some negative impacts which must be weighted in the planning balance. Officers are of the view that the positive benefits of delivery of new housing and associated affordable housing outweigh the residual harm as a result of a swathe of mitigation proposed by the applicants, both on-site and in monetary terms. Therefore, officers recommend the application for approval in this instance, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, we have several speakers this afternoon, starting with the Parish Councillor, Mr Stuart Dunn. May I remind you that you have unlimited time to speak, but if you can keep it as close to 5 minutes, that would be much appreciated. Thank you.
Sorry, Chair, it's a little bit longer than 5 minutes.
That's all right. Just keep it close.
Good afternoon. My name's Stuart Dunn, and I'm addressing you today as Chair of Coxhill Parish Council to conditionally support this application on behalf of the council and residents of the area, as set out in paragraph 66 of your report, as shown on the slide. The Parish Council welcomes the significant strategic infrastructure provision being volunteered by the developer as part of this application, i.e. the proposed community park and stride in line with the community consultations carried out by Coxo Parish Council. For your information, I'll also state that I'm also Governor of Coxo and Boburn Primary Schools. So firstly, thank you for visiting the site this morning and familiarising yourself and noting the proximity to Coxo Primary School. If you could put the second slide up, please. Coxo Parish Council's concerns are summarised in paragraph 68 to 89 of your report. All 60 paragraphs of the County Council's submissions are available on the planning portal, which hopefully you've had a chance to consider. I'll focus on 3 areas. Parking issues around the school, which you'll have missed the worst of at the time of your visit, but you can see from the photograph how bad it gets on that roundabout, and the motorway bridge and Cornforth Lane. The requirement for Section 106 education contributions and the ability for strategic extension of Coxo Primary School and needs for Section 106 contributions from developers such as this one, and support that. We very much welcome the provision of the 32-place community park and stride at a cost to develop of £350,000, but this has shrunk from 44 places originally proposed. It was on the basis of the park and stride provision, potential 40 residence parking spaces, and the contribution of a Section 106 contribution to primary school, Coxo Primary School, that residents of the village stated that they were prepared to support the scheme if developers helped to improve the community infrastructure adjoining the village site, including improving traffic movements to and from the school. We also welcome the request for early completion of the park and stride as set out in the recommendations. If you could move on to slide 3, please. We note with regret the withdrawal by the developer of the 40 off-street parking bays off of Cornforth Lane, as referred to in paragraphs 278 and 282 of your report, and paragraphs 18 to 22 of the Parish Council submission. This, we suggest, was wholly in response to the DCC Highways Officer's objections uploaded to the planning portal on the 12th of November, stating that the one-way system would only be enforceable by the police and so would be unlikely to be formally enforced, and so rely on people abiding by the system. Failure of people to do so would lead to potential conflict due to the narrow nature of the back street, not allowing two-way traffic. Respectfully, this proposal is no different to very similar arrangements behind Cooperative Terrace at the other end of Cornforth Lane and Coxo, and we must ask for consideration of reinstating of this, please. If you could move on to slide 4, please. Moving on to the issue of Section 106 primary education contribution, for some obscure reason, DCC officers are extremely reluctant to seek Section 106 contributions from Millers for primary education. Miller's consultants in their EFM report state that they would expect the developer to contribute £454,000 in paragraph 2.5 thereof. And the Miller's planning statement on the portal, 4th of March 2025, states, the applicant will enter into appropriate discussions with the local planning authority with regards to Section 106 contributions, which will be in addition to any planning conditions imposed as part of any planning decision notice. Both of these documents are available on the planning portal. If you could move on to slide 5, please. There are 2 themes to this. For many months, officers have insisted that Boburn Primary School is less than 2 miles from this development in Coxo, 1.987 miles to be precise, and therefore that Boburn Primary School should be included in the calculations for Section 106 primary contributions, and also that Coxo Primary School can't physically be extended. So firstly, focusing on the 2 miles to Boburn Primary School, this is imperative, as point 69 of the adopted policy securing developer contributions towards education provision in County Durham states, when assessing the nearest schools to a development, to assess and calculate any developer contributions, the council will apply a 2-mile distance from the development measured by the shortest available safe walking route. Safe walking route, not as the crow flies. This is the relevant policy and paragraph to consider, and DCC officers are not recommending following it, saving the developer an appropriate Section 106 contribution and ultimately leading to future capital expenditure requirements from Durham County Council's budgets and our council taxpayers. Slide 6, please. It appears the distance of 1.987 miles measured using GIS by Durham County Council Education is incorrect according to every other source. As set out in paragraph 73 of your report, Miller's EFM Education Consultants report at paragraph 2.2 cites that the distance as being 2.54 miles, which is correct if you go up to the traffic lights in Coxo. The shortest possible walking distance from the property to the nearest entry point to the development, 1 Barker's Buildings, is 2.2 miles from Bowburn Primary School as walked by parish council staff and family members, which cuts through the park. This has been done using GPS and GIS systems. Please, please have the Durham County Council measurement verified, as this has severe consequences for this and other applications and the Section 106 contributions that should be expected. If you could move on to slide 7, please. We therefore believe that the surplus places at Bowburn Primary School should not be taken into account in this planning application, as set out in paragraph 46 of the Parish Council submission on the portal, because Bowburn Primary School is over 2 miles walk, and additional children are forecasted by planners from other planning applications. I draw your attention to paragraphs 229 and 230 of your report, which incorrectly conflates the DCC Developers Contributions Policy, the SPD, with the STP, the School Transport Policy, and confuse this issue. The mileage issues are very different. Only the 2-mile limit in paragraph 6.9 of the SPD should be taken into account when considering whether to require a primary education contribution, and it would be considered a failure of duty by the public for Durham County Council not to do so under its own policy. It is true to say that any under 8-year-olds not receiving a place at Coxo Primary School from this development could be entitled to free transport. However, due to the distance to school admissions criteria for Coxo Primary School, it's unlikely that any pupils from this development would not be admitted to Coxo Primary School, and so free school transport would not be required, and this shouldn't be a consideration. Instead, residents of the Limes, Beachfield Rise and Grove estates will progressively start to lose the ability to attend their village school. Also, as stated in paragraph 4.7 of Miller's EFM Education Consultants report, it states that there are 44 pupils on roll at Coxo Primary School who either live at Bowburn or Park Hill. It's likely that applications from pupils living in Bowburn and at least the northern part of Park Hill will be pushed back into the available spaces in Bowburn Primary School. So turning to the issue of the extension of Coxo Primary School, as stated above, failure to extend Coxo Primary School for additional children will lead to a loss of historic parental choice, and you as county councillors will be depriving of their choice by not requiring the developer to pay all of the consequences of their development. The fantastic new Bowburn Primary School, which I'm also a governor of, was purpose-built for the latent demand that will arise from the many, many recent developments in and around Bowburn, and it is filling up fast. And we've no reason to doubt that it will reach capacity that it was built for in due course. If you could move on to slide 8, please. Coxo Primary School, by contrast, is a Victorian amalgamation of a former infant and junior school with some large lobbies and corridors that, according to government standards, get counted in the free space calculations. As a result of this is an awful thing that you're looking at. This is a Year 4 classroom in Coxo Primary School in 2025. This and a mezzanine level room has been used for Year 6 teaching, and these conditions are far from ideal, which thankfully the Head of Education has recognised. If you could move on to slide 9, please. As I say, thankfully the Head of Education has supported the use of £375,000 from the recently completed Bogma Hall Barrett's development adjoining the school on the eastern side of the school, which you saw today, and also 91,000 Section 106 funding from Phase 3 of the Limes development to be used to fund this. All remaining capital budget for the school, and together with a contribution of 150,000 from Durham County Council's education capital budget, hopefully will fund completion of phase 1 and replace these temporary teaching places with fit-for-purpose classroom space and take Coxo Primary School to full Form 2 entry. This plan shows the 3-phase extension proposed for Coxo Primary School. The edge red shows the new build for phase 1, which hopefully will be completed by or around Easter. The edge yellow shows the new build for phase 2 and the remodelling and creation and opening of a new nursery unit for the first time at Coxo Primary School by moving remaining Key Stage 1 classes into 2 further classrooms. The cost of building phase 2, the yellow bit, is 292,000 if built alongside phase 1, or 327,000 if built subsequently. The final part, phase 3, shown in purple, is the cost of extending the hall so that we've got enough space for the whole school to attend assemblies, or to reduce from 3 necessary lunch settings, which is absolutely anarchic, and also to have space for parents to attend pupil celebrations, just like in any other school, and the cost of that is £222,000. So as you can see, there are lots of capital works and extensions that children from this proposed development will benefit from. A planning pre-app assessment, as you can see the words at the right-hand side of the screen, confirms that having regard to the above, we foresee no objections to your proposals on planning grounds on the basis of the information submitted to date. I would invite you to proceed to submit a planning application. With the support of Durham County Council, a planning application will be submitted for building phase 1 by the school to be completed Easter 2026. If you could move on to slide 10, please. It's noted in paragraph 242 and the recommendation to Planning Committee in paragraph 406 that an SPD Section 106 early years contribution of £123,739 has been agreed with the applicants. Coxo Parish Council would request that this Planning Committee targets this at phase 2 and the creation of a nursery at Coxo Primary School for the first time, please. The officer's recommendations in paragraph 229 and to 233 are that no primary education contribution is due, despite Millers and their consultants expecting to. Coxo Parish Council believe that this is wrong and ask that you require that the distance is verified to Bowburn Primary School, and if it is indeed found to be over 2 miles, as everyone else believes, that a contribution is required in compliance with paragraph 6.9 of your DCC securing developer places policy, and we request that a section 106 primary education contribution is required, as set out in paragraph 229 of your report. 2, create more education infrastructure to support new development. We ask that you therefore leave this matter to be reconsidered later under reserved matters. Moving on to the final slide, you'll be pleased to know. If the request of verification of the distance is found to be less than 2 miles, sorry, I think I'm moving on too quickly, it's requested that to consider a voluntary contribution in line with planning application DM 15-00793, where no contribution was initially required by Durham County Council, but the voluntary contribution agreement dated 7th of February 2017, as shown in the portal, subsequently agreed a voluntary contribution of £91,935, which is being used and spent on phase 1, to ideally fund the remainder of the phase 2 nursery extension. It's noted that the 2 empty fields that you saw next to this site were originally part of this development, and when a purchase price can be agreed with the new owners, it's highly likely that an application will come forward for approval in the near future. Your officers are working on another site for 145 homes at the eastern edge of our village, so it's imperative that you resolve this Section 106 primary education contribution issue, and developers are asked to contribute to the necessary primary education infrastructure in line with paragraph 229 of your report, rather than Durham County Council capital budget bearing that cost and council taxpayers. We note that the provision of housing for the elderly in this development is via 5-bedroom houses as set out in paragraph 8 and 288 of your report. Expecting older people to live with their families. Respectfully, we don't believe that this addresses the real need and shortage for modern bungalows to rent and buy and to give older people in our community independent living, and suggest that this is not proposed or accepted in any future developments. But on this one, this development is a bit unique in what it's trying to do to meet community demands, so we're not objecting to that in this instance. Members, thank you for listening. We hope that you are able to support our requests, and thank you to the developers for working with us so far to try and achieve their development and also deliver benefits for our community alongside this. If you've got any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer them, and I'm so sorry for speaking for so long.
Not at all. Thank you very much, Councillor Dunn. We'll move on to the next speaker, but I'll be asking the officers to address any points after they've all spoken. Thank you. So can I now hear from Councillor Jan Blakey, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I have some concerns, and residents have approached me with their concerns about this application. Can I start off by saying I'm on the board for Stray Aid and also as Governor for Boburn School. Stray Aid's raised its concerns about the effect of the acoustic fence, what they've already got put in, which they had to put in by a previous planning application, that this will not stop the noise of the dogs being carried on the new development. So it'll only be a matter of time before DCC ends up with the complaints coming in from the residents who move in about the amount of noise what's going on. National Planning Framework, Sustainable Development. Environmental issues, poor sewage drainage is already causing problems with tankers having to come out weekly to take away the excess sewage. In Policy 36 of the County Durham Plan, water infrastructure, applications involving the use of non-mains methods of drainage will not be permitted in areas where public sewage exists. So obviously we've got an issue there already. I'm just concerned about the compound of the extra development on, and we have got a macerator down the bottom what is not coping now, so that's only going to get worse. Planning framework, transport, safe communities. Access to the school has already created an issue with cars parking to and even on the entrance and on the mini roundabout, and the motorway bridge with the safety of the children and their carers often being hazardous. They have to walk on the road to get into school, and the local bus services, which sometimes do drop children off, can't get down the road to actually drop the children off because the roads are that blocked because of the amount of cars down there. Also on that point, we are the lucky people to have 3 working quarries round our area, and these quarries are going constantly, some of them 24 hours a day now, and we have huge wagons coming down at speed. We have tried to work with the Highways Authority to try and get a speed reduction scheme in. That doesn't seem to be happening anytime soon. And we've tried to get, like I said, the limits reduced, but it is the volume of wagons as well. They have got planning permits for their amount of wagons, but with it being in the proximity to the school. The issue I've also got is the access to the whole development. One way in, one way out. If we have any issue on any stretch of that road with an accident, there is no other access egress for emergency vehicles to get anywhere in there. Right, there's also, and I've been down and seen it myself, I don't know whether you noticed it today, giant knotweed. Now, there's a problem on site with giant knotweed, and I know that that'll affect those who purchase the properties down there might not be able to get mortgages because of this problem. So will we be left with empty properties? I don't know. Education. We already know that the school at Coxo is at capacity, and that the previous plan at properties at the Park and Stride had a better Park and Stride facility than what it's already what it's offering now. So it has changed. That parking, I think, will be took up mainly with the people at the school, the teachers and teaching assistants, and also the 106 monies, what was agreed to start off with this site, has suddenly been withdrawn. Now, is this going to be a continuation of things on planning agreements throughout, where people come in with 106 minutes and then they get so far down the planning process and then say, oh, well, it doesn't matter, I'm not going to bother paying 106. That seems to be coming into power a lot lately. If the council agrees to this application, I would like them to seriously consider putting a condition on that they ask for the 106 money for the school to provide the education what the children of Coxo and surrounding villages need. But like I say, my big issue is what's come from the residents, and that's what I'm there for. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor Blakey. Now we have one person speaking for the objectors and one for supporters, and you're limited to 5 minutes each. So we'll start with Mr. Martin Fredrickson. You have 5 minutes.
Lovely, thank you. Martin Fredrickson, resident in Gladstone Terrace. As far as I'm aware, no plans have been put in place to address the ongoing concerns of residents about the amount of traffic that will be using the A177, especially at peak times round school runs, etc. This stretch of the A177, with an entranceway already added for the latest Bogma Farm development, is just an accident waiting to happen, especially given the high volume of HGVs that use this stretch of road coming from the quarry at all times, not just peak travel times. As Jan's just explained, some of the quarries are open 24 hours a day. Double yellow lines have been added, and further double yellow lines are going to be added from what I'm led to believe. However, as confirmed by traffic wardens when they've been on site in recent weeks, under current laws, people are still able to park on double yellow lines in order to unload and have up to 10 minutes in which to do so. The dropping of children falls very loosely under this description, thus rendering the traffic wardens unable to hand out tickets, etc., as the cars move within the 10-minute window, but unfortunately are then replaced by other vehicles doing exactly the same. It is also noted that Strayhead in recent months has increased in size, and the amount of traffic using the junction has increased as well. The Park and Stride that has been proposed on the latest development, on the latest plans, has reduced in size and is now nearly half the amount of spaces that were initially proposed. 32 spaces that have now been provided on the latest draft plans, but without any form of enforcement. These spaces could just be utilised by the residents of the development or other areas of the village, or the school teachers and teaching assistants who work at the primary school. This would lead to further congestion on the A177, Cornforth Lane and Ashbourne Drive estate. With regards to utilities, there's been no assurances to existing residents with regards to water pressure in the drainage systems and how this new development may affect them. It is noted from recent comments on Coxo Parish webpage that residents in Ashbourne Drive development had seen a marked decrease in their water pressure since the latest Barrett development at Bogma Farm was being built. What will the effects be with this development to the residents along Cornforth Lane? The proximity of the development to the existing houses. When other developments have been built in the village, it is noted that existing residents either gained land or were provided with a wider back lane, etc. The most evident is that of the houses on School Avenue, which is the opposite side to Gladstone Terrace. When the Ashbourne Drive development was made, they were provided with land and a new wider back lane / road was built. With regards to the current plans, initially parking spaces were going to be provided for the residents of Bartow's Buildings, Kenmare Buildings, Gladstone Terrace, Grove Cottages and Garden Terrace. However, the parking spaces were not adjacent to the properties, leading to security issues with parking, and therefore residents objected to this initial part, in part also because the existing back lane is in a state of grave disrepair, which I'm sure anybody who visited the site today would have seen, and is not suitable for a high traffic. The parking spaces were then removed entirely, and no further attempt by the developer or landowner has been made to address any of these
1 minute
concerns.
remaining.
This means that there is now no natural barrier to the new houses, and as a result, the back gardens of the proposed development will abut the existing back lane to Gladstone Terrace and Bartow's Buildings, and potentially those new houses will then have access to that back lane, leading to further possible congestion in the use of cars going in there by those properties. If parking spaces are not an option, would a green barrier be considered, with each property either being given land to the rear of the house to act as a natural barrier to the development, thus stopping potential use of new houses accessing that back lane. School and local amenities. Initially, a lot of support was given to the development by other residents within Coxer, as they were given the impression that the local school would receive funding to build a much-needed extension. From all the information now provided, this would not be the case, and any money to be provided by the developer
Thank you,
is
Mr.
going
Fredrickson.
elsewhere.
Thank you. You've
Sorry.
now run out of time. We now hear from Mr. Sean Headley, representing the planning agents, and we also have present Mr. Aidan Hamilton, who is available for questions.
Chair, just before you start the clock, is it possible to get the infographic on the screen?
I'll ask.
Perfect. Thank you, Chair.
Yes.
Thank you. The applicant has worked extensively with officers to help facilitate the delivery of a high-quality scheme. Design of the layout has been a collaborative process with council officers and has been amended numerous times during determination to ensure it achieved all of the council's requirements, including a good level of residential amenity. Both parties consider that the site provides a sustainable development opportunity which contributes to the provision of a mix of housing types and sizes, particularly promoting family housing and bungalows which allow people to stay in their local community. We thank the officers for their time and diligence in working cooperatively to ensure a fully policy-compliant proposal with no objections from any professional officer of the council or statutory consultee. We also welcome the positive recommendation. Miller Homes are one of the UK's leading private home builders with a long-standing national reputation for building high-quality, energy-efficient homes. Miller Homes are consistently recognised as a 5-star rated house builder by the Home Builder Federation and have an excellent track record locally. Since 2021, Miller Homes have received detailed planning approval for 7 major applications in the county, totalling 1,500 units. These schemes deliver 191 affordable homes for locals, plus the enabling of a further 750 affordable homes at Seam Garden Village. Their commitment to working positively with Durham County Council is unwavering. As part of the early engagement process, there's been a significant engagement by both the landowner and the applicant. Miller Homes carried out a public consultation event in August 2024 in the Village Hall. Invitations went out to 2,000 households, with only 61 people attending the event and only 92 completed surveys in total. They also met with the Parish Council, where they were given the opportunity to ask specific questions. Another consultation was undertaken in January 2025 to give people further opportunity to comment. The door-to-door survey spoke to 163 residents, with nearly 50% supportive and a further 25% were neutral. In excess of 7,000 residents in Coxer Parish, there are in excess of 7,000 residents in Coxer Parish, There was only 23 objections received. That's 0.3% against the development. The landowner met with Coxo Parish Council, Coxo Primary School and Strayed on many occasions. The delivery of the park and stride is a direct response to local concerns at early stakeholder meetings. To alleviate an observed parking issue near the site entrance, specifically on the roundabout and bridge, which has been previously mentioned, the applicant proposed on-site parking to assist with off-street parking at peak school times. The Strayed infrastructure improvements enable better site access on foot and vehicle by combining the proposed access with theirs. The utility improvements of the charity ensure that they are future-proofed and avoid unnecessary roadworks in the short to medium term. Strayed has not capped the capacity. It has not got a capped capacity in terms of the number of dogs there, so it is not increasing in size, as previously mentioned. What are the local benefits to Coxo? The proposals underpin the applicant's commitment to delivering much-needed quality homes in the county, providing other significant economic and social benefits directly to the residents of Coxo. These include training and employment for local workers, delivering local apprenticeships. The mix of new homes include 10 bungalows, 15% on-site affordable housing to help with the near 10,000 applications received for affordable homes in County Durham, and those on particularly low incomes or key workers who wish to get on the housing ladder. The most significant economic benefit from the development are set out on the infographic on the screen and are self-explanatory. Miller Homes has a waste management strategy which has been a great success nationally. Their 2025 rate so far has been 87.5% of construction waste being recycled. With regards to ecology, on top of the landscaping and ecology gains, Millers have a Homes for Nature policy. This means that they implement bird boxes in each home and hedgehog highways through the site. There is no Japanese knotweed on site, it is boundweed. This was brought up before by one of the councillors. The site complies with the British standard requested by the environmental health within the properties and the amenity spaces of each dwelling. The measures to achieve this are provided by an acoustic bund with fence along the southern boundary, an acoustic fence along the western boundary with some occasional enhanced glazing and mechanical extract ventilation. So in conclusion, the takeaway headlines we would like the councillors to focus on are the proposals would deliver not only 99 homes, including affordable homes, but also importantly, economic benefits for Coxo, as shown on the screen. Approving this proposal today will also provide job security for existing employees and tradespeople mobilising from other sites to this site. Let's not forget the extensive supply chain of Durham-based contractors Miller Homes employ for each site, including the likes of Esch, Lumsden Carroll, Car Construction and Sirius, among a multitude of suppliers. The officer's report concurs with our planning assessment that the proposal is fully compliant with the plan. The development also exceeds all required technical space and construction requirements. Importantly, in October 2025, Durham County Council will not have a 5-year land supply. This is well documented following recent inquiries. This development will help meet that identified housing need. The proposals are considered policy compliant when reading the development plan as a whole, and there are no other material considerations which indicate otherwise. We therefore urge councillors to support the officer recommendation and approve this application today. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Headley. And now I'm going to ask if you'd like to address, Graham, like to address many questions that were raised by the speakers.
Yeah, I'll begin by a disclaimer if I don't quite catch all of them, but I'm sure we'll pick up on a few. I think there's quite a lot of the matters are covered in the report in terms of maybe some highway safety matters and other various things. So I just want to focus on a couple of things rather than spend some time rebutting all of those or talking about all those. Going in sort of order on my notes here, with respect to the 2-mile walking distance, Councillor Dunn rightly refers to some correspondence between himself or the parish and the local education authority, where the local education authority sets out its basis for that measurement, and obviously we've made a recommendation in accordance with that. That's basically the position that we've brought forward to members today, and that's what we'll do. On review of the 2015 permission that Councillor Dunn was referring to, we've had a little look back at the report on that, and that is a statutory requirement. There was a need for 6 places off that development. They couldn't come up with a figure as it was an outline application, so the final figure was prorated per number of dwellings. So once a subsequent application was approved at Reserve Matters, we got a final figure for that. So that figure come forward, I think it was once it also got prorated up with inflation, was the figure that Councillor Dunn referred to, around 93k. So that was not a voluntary one as far as we can see in the paperwork in the committee report. The sewage issues, looking through the report, we haven't had anything back from Northumbrian Water on this case. We've had to report that to members accordingly, and that's what we've done. So it's worth flagging that one. Obviously, the issue of highway safety and school drop-off, members saw this morning, the proposed area for the Park and Stride, the balancing act that the council has had, the planning authorities had to do in the report in terms of the weighting it can afford to that, etc. So other than that, I think I'll probably just wait for any specific questions from the panel thereafter. I think the rest of it should have been in the report, and members will have that in their mind. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Graham. Right, well, I think we'll move on to questions from the members. I'm sure you've got quite a few. Councillor Wilkes.
I think we probably all got quite a few, actually. I've got 4 different things I want to raise. 2 are really straightforward, and it's to do with the conditions. So condition 25 says that basically the developer can start work at 7:30 every day of the week apart from Sunday. I think that's unreasonable given how close the terraces are. So if we're minded to approve this application, I think it should be the 8 o'clock. I don't know why we don't have 8 o'clock as the standard and people have to ask for 7:30. It just doesn't seem right 6 days a week that you'd be having been woken up by building work at 7:30 in the morning. So I would hope we could change that to 8 o'clock start. There was a mention by one of the objectors regarding Gladstone Terrace and access and concern about everybody in these houses being able to access onto the back lane of Gladstone Terrace. So I would ask, can we not just condition a removal of any rights to be able to put in driveways or gates to the rear of those properties that face the back of Gladstone Terrace? So that then removes that as an issue, because people won't be able to do that. But the 2 more important things for me, I wasn't very comforted by the statement from the planning officer that the school provision and said that's what we'll do. Because if we've made a calculation which is inaccurate, we need to address that. And there's nobody here from school provision to my understanding, and I'm not convinced that somebody would come into this room and show that level of detail from a parish council, an ex-county councillor, and not have some legitimacy to what he's saying. And I think that we should have a condition here that if it's shown that that distance is not 2 miles, then whatever the calculation should be, that money should be allocated and the additional funding to Coxo Primary School if that's what's deemed to be the most appropriate thing to do. It does concern me that it appears that we've had nobody come back and actually say they're wrong, because they've clearly submitted this prior to the meeting as well, and nobody's come back and said I would have expected we'd have seen something up there which said this is actually how the county council has calculated 2 miles, less than 2 miles, so that we would then be reassured as members of the committee that that was in fact the case. And I really do feel that that should be conditioned, that if it turns out that we're wrong as a council, that what's being asked for should be considered. And I don't know whether that can be conditioned as well. The last thing I wanted to raise was highway safety. It's very clear to me that that area is not safe at the moment for a load of kids and potentially nursery children as well to be walking across a bus gate which appears to have no proper crossing points. And when you actually look within the conditions, it talks about the house was having to make sure before a single house is occupied that there are electric points for cars, that there's somewhere where the bins are going to go, and that all of these different things for the new householders will be there. But we're going to have to wait 9 months, potentially 9 months, before we actually see any improvements, including the new car park that's going to be put in for the school. I envisage that that entrance site will be carnage, because you'll have huge vehicles driving in and out of an active site for building houses. There'll be no double yellow lines, as been promised, to put into the entrance of there. So you're going to have cars parked all over the entrance to that site, with kids as young as, well, nursery school kids getting out onto a main roundabout. To me, the condition should be that no houses can be occupied until you've sorted out safe crossing of that road and that the car park is available to be used. If they can have the bins in the new houses, why can't we have safety for the kids who are going to be crossing the road? And one last quick thing, Chair, 'cause I know I've gone on a bit. One last thing is that there was a mention made that everyone's parking on all of the double yellow lines. It's very straightforward for us to condition that all the double yellow lines in that area should have the 2 markings put on the pavement which say no loading at all at any time. Solves the problem, because then our officers or the police can simply ticket people there and then. I don't know why it's not already done, but I think it should be conditioned as part of this application.
Thank you, Councillor Wilkes. I think, Graham, do you want to answer those questions? Conditions, yeah.
Just picking up on the 2 conditions firstly, we see no reason that if a motion's tabled with those 2 amendments in there, both want to amend the condition 25 and include a new one, that would in effect remove permitted development rights for any openings to the re-offences. So that would be gates and other things. Then people would in effect have to apply to the planning department for permission first before they did it. So I think those would cover those 2 particular aspects there. In regard to the 2-mile walking distance, I think there has been some correspondence between the local education authority and the parish council, as far as I understand. So the council has put its case to the parish. Clearly what you've heard today is in effect the response of the parish council. So in effect is our interpretation as we sit here today. We have 2 sides of the argument, if you like, in terms of those distances. We approached the local education authority prior to the meeting to get confirmation of that, and they confirmed that they were comfortable with their working. So members will have to make a decision today based on the fact that we, as the local education authority, are informing this planning department that they believe the school to be within the 2-mile walking distance.
Sorry, Chair, could I just come in, please? Is that on the portal, the planning portal, the proof and the evidence? Because we're taking it on word, aren't we? People can make mistakes.
Graham, do you want to? Can you answer that?
It was direct correspondence with the parish, as far as I'm aware. Clearly, that's something that the parish have obviously responded to. So, no, it's not on the portal at this point in time. It's clearly something that is now an issue of debate. And I think that's all I can say on that at this moment in time.
I think Mr Reid has a comment to make on this.
Yeah, thank you. I think just in respect to Councillor Wilkes' point about whether there's officer correspondence on the portal or not, I have to say I wouldn't expect that type of correspondence to go on the planning portal. On any type of planning application, there's always significant internal debate between your planning officers and the consultees. It's not normal procedure to put that on the portal. But just backing up what Graham's just said, you know, I have discussed this case with Graham, and I think the calculations have actually been subject to discussion with the head of education as well. So I think all your officers can say today is that we do have a high degree of confidence, as we have with all internal consultee comments that we bring forward to this committee chair, that the measurements and the approach to how we've calculated this is accurate.
Thank you, Steve. Graham, is there anything you want to mention about highway safety?
Yeah, there's one other, obviously, was the highways issue, and we, in terms of obviously creating a new limb off the roundabout and a new set of estate roads in such proximity to a school is likely to potentially attract further parking. The imposition of double yellow lines is done through a traffic regulation order under the Highways Act. There was no request from the Highways Authority to do that. Doesn't mean to say that the council wouldn't come along at some point in the future to do that, should an issue be created as a result. But at this point, there was no requirement under the planning to deem that as a necessity. And I think that's ultimately why that's not included in the proposals. Thank you, Chair.
Can I just remind you, there's a question about conditions removing the right to put in drives or gates at the back of Gladstone Terrace. Is that a possibility?
We could do that to the proposed properties. Obviously, we can't. The existing properties at Gladstone Terrace are already there and outside the red line, so don't fall within that. I don't think they would meet the reasonable tests either in regards to that, but the existing ones, it would be able to will come up with an appropriate worded condition, which we're happy to run through Chair and Vice Chair after the applications should it be approved, so we get the wording of that agreed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Members, any more questions? I think, is that a question or do we move to
No,
debate?
I want to come back to on some of the things I asked, but I'll wait for anybody else first.
What, any further questions? Oh, Ian, thank you.
Yeah, hi Chair. Yeah, I've got a few. Infrastructure. With regards to the actual grid infrastructure on the village, yeah, what's the capacity on the village and what's the potential future capacity? Yeah, because I've heard that there are properties tripping out all over the place. Yeah, so if you put another 100 houses on, yeah, potentially it's going to exacerbate that as well.
Councillor Catchpole, is that addressed to the developer?
Addressed to
Yeah.
the developers, yeah.
Yeah, sorry, I think I caught most of that. Was that the electricity capacity?
Yes.
Yeah, I think the reports are on the website, and if they're not, we can give them independently. But the Electricity Board have confirmed that there's capacity for the dwellings and the upgraded capacity to Strayed that we are delivering through the development, or would develop through the development. So that comes straight from the statutory body itself.
Okay, thank you. And the last one really is about traffic management. That road itself is incredibly busy. Yeah. Put the construction traffic on there as well as the new resident traffic on there. Has that been calculated in the traffic management plan?
Who's going to answer that? You, Graham? Yeah.
Obviously, there's two phases to any type of development. You have the construction phase, which gets you construction traffic, which then blends itself into what, for want of a better word, is an operational phase where people are living there. In the long term, obviously, the impacts are looking at residential movements in the peak hour, and primarily the construction traffic is a part of that in the process, therefore, is a temporary effect. Clearly, the movements within that, the main focus of any transport assessment tends to be the impact on the rush hours. Anything beyond that, more widely, there's not very many places within the county would see any particular impact, to the point that would be material for highway safety considerations. So we can manage that through those working hour conditions as well. So in the round, that is all within the TA, and it's been assessed by the Highways Authority, who've come back with no particular mitigation or any requests accordingly. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any more questions? Councillor Hope?
Just working on the Ordnance Survey mapping, I've just calculated the route from the site to Bowburn School, and it's coming up as 2.73 miles on that. So I'll echo Councillor Wilkes's sentiments on wanting to get a thorough answer on what that is, please.
Thank you. Do you have any more comment on that point, or have we really leave it there? Yeah. Councillor Wilkes.
Yeah, so just to go back to some of the... many years ago, we had a planning application passed for Finkel Training College for 93 or 100 houses. I can't remember exactly how many in my patch. And we got an agreement that there would be a highways condition, that work would be done to see whether or not they would then reduce the speed limit on the road. That work has just been implemented. And let's just say we're talking about, 4 years since those houses were occupied. So if we don't condition the things that we want in this room, sometimes they either don't happen or they happen way after the time when really they should happen. And we can put in conditions on in relation to highways issues. And I do think there needs to be a condition, because it's all right to say you're going to put in a car park for the school, but if you've got no condition in there to make sure that it's safe to get across the road, we can condition to say that that must also be looked at and dealt with as part of the conditions. I also think that there's nothing wrong with us saying that we should be requesting the highways, and it's very disappointing that there's nobody at all was able to come today from highways, but I do think we should be able to say to them, you've got to look at putting restrictions on to stop anybody from parking, put in the no loading situation, and agree with the developer that all of this will be done way before 9 months after you've occupied the first house. Because that site's going to be open and people are going to be parking right the way through with big wagons going in and out, pavements blocked, right onto a roundabout where you've got a bus gate and kids and nursery kids crossing over there. I'm not willing to accept supporting this application if officers aren't willing to agree that those conditions are put in place. before we consider any other issues to do with the application.
Do you want to add anything to that? Mr. Reid is going to answer that.
Thank you, Chair. I think just a couple of points there. I think, firstly, on the 9-month, which you mentioned in the report, to put the community park and stride in, I think, as Graham set out in his report, that was a voluntary contribution. As members will be aware, in planning terms, we can only require something to be implemented through a Section 106 agreement or a planning condition if it's essential to make the development acceptable. We don't have any planning policies, and I'm not aware of any council that does, that requires a developer to provide a community facility such as that, which is over and above anything which is required in normal planning policy. So I can only assume there's been discussions between the case officer and the applicants in terms of the timing of that. And I think Neil would probably support me in saying that. I think we'd be on very sticky ground if we were to try and insist that that facility was brought in at an earlier date. But I think it's perfectly permissible, Chair, if you want to ask the applicant, and bearing in mind it is a voluntary contribution to provide the park and stride scheme, if the applicant is prepared to bring it forward, further forward in the development programme. That's clearly something for them to consider. Just in terms of the wider planning and highway assessment, I think all officers would be very happy to see mitigation put in very early on in the process. There's two things that hold us back on that normally. Firstly is development viability. Quite a lot of infrastructure on the major developments does come to a certain amount of money, and I think I was reading something in the report here, I think we're not far off £1 million worth of infrastructure. And the National Planning Policy Framework does remind us, and again, whether we agree with this or not, it does remind us that we have to have regard to developer profit margins and cash flow analysis. And I think on a lot of sites, if we were asked for everything to go in up front, I think we'd run the risk of falling foul of NPPF advice on that. In terms of consultation with highways, just on Councillor Wilkes' final point, it is unfortunate that we don't have a highways engineer with us today. As members who have been on this committee a while will know, we do virtually always have a highways engineer with us. But again, I know from my discussions with Graham and the wider team that there's been significant highways assessment of this planning application, having regard to the proximity of the school and indeed some of the challenges we do have with the local road network. But the long and short of it is that highways are very happy with the proposal subject to the conditions presented, Chair.
Thank you. Neil, do you want to make any further comment?
Thank you, Chair. It's just to emphasise what's already been said, really, which is that the park and stride is a voluntary matter, and therefore it's not something that members can be affording any weight to, including its delivery.
Thank you.
Chair, can I just come back on that point? Because highways, at paragraph 7 of the conditions, within 9 months of the commencement of the development, a timetable for the completion of the park and stride will be submitted. So when I said it'll be 9 months afterwards, it won't, because it'll take them 3 years to build out this site. So you're talking about a minimum of 4 years before that park and stride is in place, despite the fact that that site will have been developed out. And that's just asking for the actual design after 9 months, not for actually completing it. And it's from the commencement of the development. They could do a whole raft of other stuff. You could be 3 or 4 years down the line. It won't have happened. But more importantly, the report says underneath, reason, in the interest of protection, etc. Reason, in the interest of highway safety in accordance with Policy 21 of the County Durham Plan. The condition there actually says that the reason for the condition is because it's required under Policy 21. There's nothing to stop us from insisting that this is dealt with at the earliest possible stage. There isn't.
Thank you. We are straying into debate now, I can see, but I think that Mr. Headley wants to answer some of the questions you've raised.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. You mentioned the park and stride and its ability to be opened. There is obviously going to be conflict with construction traffic during that period of time, so it'll be opened at the earliest opportunity once there's no conflict with construction traffic. There's also, in terms of peak times, the deliveries to the site would be ceased, and I think that was a concern of Councillor Wilkes before there, that during peak times there will not be deliveries brought onto the site with conflict with school traffic.
Yeah, sorry, I was just going to reiterate that point, that if policing the parking on the bridge is a concern through construction, that's something that we can pick up through the development and have it policed ourselves, but policed by the council. You're in charge of them conditions and you're in charge of enforcing them, and we're happy to abide by them.
Thank you. I think we're more or less moving to debate now, so I'd ask members if you want to say anything further.
Sorry, just one quick thing.
Start with Councillor Catchpole.
Sorry. Yeah, just one quick thing with reference to the developer. The Section 106 contributions, what phases are they spread out amongst? Yeah, and is there different amounts to those contributions?
Sorry, do you want the amounts?
Absolutely.
There's a BNG monitoring contribution of £2,800. No more than 45 dwellings shall be occupied until 50% of the early years education contribution is being paid, and that's 123,739. No, excuse me. No more than 73 dwellings shall be occupied until the remaining early years contribution is being paid. No more than 45 dwellings shall be occupied until 50% of the healthcare contribution is paid to the council, £47,817. And no more than 73 dwellings until the whole healthcare contribution has been paid. No more than 45 dwellings occupied until the open space contribution has been paid to the council, £146,579. No more than 73 dwellings to be occupied until the rest of the open space contribution has been paid. No dwelling to be occupied until a play park contribution of £18,513 is paid. No more than 45 dwellings shall be occupied until 50% of the secondary education contribution is being paid, £316,000 and 58. And then no more than 73 dwellings until it's all paid. And then no more than 45 dwellings shall be occupied until 50% of the SEND education is paid, 83,140. No more than 73 dwellings occupied until the remaining 50% is paid.
Does that answer your question, Ms?
Thank you.
Yeah. So, Councillor Hope, you wanted to say something?
Thanks, Chair. Big issue for me is the stray aid dog home. Now, I know there's £250,000 going into helping supporting these guys, but on site this morning, we were far to the north-east of the site at Coxhoe Park. With the noise of the A1 and the traffic that was around us, we could still hear the dogs from there. So if I could hear the dogs from there, regardless of whatever acoustic blocking systems is put in, when them dogs bark of an evening, and when dogs are brought in on an evening, they will trigger the dogs to bark. That there is going to affect the population moving into these properties. Now, if these complaints start coming in, that dog aid will have to move somewhere, and I don't think that that is fair on a business when we've only got a handful of these places within the county itself. So for me, it's a massive issue, and again, people's businesses are going to be affected by it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hope. Anybody else want to make any more comments? Councillor Wilkes.
I've got to support Councillor Hope in his comments. I've been to this site before when I was a cabinet member. We only have one site like this in the whole county, and there's actually people as far away, the police and councils as far away as Middlesbrough actually bring dogs to stray aid. Policy 6 is pretty clear in the County Durham plan, which talks about new developments not adversely impacting existing development. It's pretty finely balanced here, of course, when you then consider all of the other planning issues and the fact that, yes, we want more housing, But we can't be building something which then results in an almost certain result down the line of a business going out of business. So at the moment, I want to listen to what anybody else has got to say, but I am really concerned about that and the fact that this is in breach or risks being in breach of Policy 6.
Thank you. Any further comment? Well, I'd just like to say something as well. I think I'm in agreement with Councillor Hope and Councillor Wilkes on this. I'm very concerned about the impact on the business. It is a noisy site, and that was clear when we visited. But my concern is that whatever provision is made, you know, on advertising or anything, there's nothing to stop complaints being made, and it's going to damage the business. And it's also its responsibility of the council to manage these complaints. And I'm not sure that it's the right thing to do in these circumstances to impose what could be a nuisance on the area. So anybody wish to make any proposals at this stage?
Chair, could I seek some clarification from the officers? Because clearly, if we were minded not to approve this application on the grounds of Policy 6, I would presume it would be paragraph A particularly, that it's that it has to be compatible with and is not prejudicial to any existing allocated or permitted use of adjacent land. As to whether or not there are other planning policies that we would need to include as part of that submission, and whether or not actually officers feel that they would be sufficient grounds on which to turn an application down.
Thank you. Would you like to answer that?
Yeah, happy to come back on that one. As members will be aware, there's occasionally overlap between various different policies. So Policy 6A talks about joining land uses being compatible. Policy, looking at the section on this assessment does look also at Policy 31 in terms of amenity and the impact thereafter from that. That's something that members should bear in mind, and also paragraph 200 of the MPPF, which is specifically designed to protect existing businesses from new development, and that has ultimately been the assessment that's been done by officers in the report and the conclusion that we've reached to within the terms of that paragraph. So not only do we have our County Durham plans, but potentially something very specific within the MPPF designed for this exact scenario. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just to come back on what members have asked about this balance. So clearly, and I think this is sort of summarised in paragraph 399 of the report. So clearly there's some residual harm, if you like, in terms of amenity. The officer in writing the report has balanced that up and come to the view that harm's outweighed by the benefits of the scheme. Clearly that's a judgment, it's a balance. If members were to take a contrary view to that, it's ultimately something that we'd have to defend on appeal.
Thank you, Neil.
Excuse me. Chair.
Yes. Thank. Oh, apologies. Yes.
Yeah. Excuse me. I think it's worth pointing out. I don't think it has been yet that the environmental health officer has not objected to this, and we meet and exceed all noise requirements within the development.
There's been no objection from Strayed.
And there's been no objection from Strayed at all throughout. I mean, in fact, we've been in discussions with Strayed from the start about this.
Thank you for pointing that out.
I think just picking up on the last point from Councillor Wilkes in terms of next steps, if you like, from any decision that's made in regard to this, I think, as we explained earlier this morning, there's been a lot of pressure from the local planning authority on behalf of environmental health and other consultees to really test that particular issue out. We've obviously got the framework in which we can operate, which is Policy 6A, paragraph 200, etc. And in effect, where the application started with gaps in its noise assessment, it didn't do nighttime assessment, for example. At that point, it was a statutory nuisance, and therefore, under all those policies I've talked about, it would have been a refusal before you today. As the mitigation built and the assessments plugged gaps, if you like. That mitigation brought that down to a point where we believe as officers that's a moderate harm in the planning balance. So that sits against that. We've acknowledged in the report that there is harm, there is an impact on immunity. Environmental health officers are comfortable that that is not a statutory nuisance under their remit, which brings it to us in planning. What that means is the development does have a harm. It is transformative. It is turning a field into a housing development, and ultimately it is going to be right next door to Strayed and the motorway. So against that, we look at what that mitigation is, and if that is enough, in our view, to outweigh the need to deliver new housing, both inside and outside a local plan. There's many, many words in the report to that effect, and in our view, we feel that noise impact, albeit still there and will exist, does not outweigh the need to deliver the housing. Members, you may choose to do differently and go the other way and think, well, actually the harm created is much greater than the delivery of housing or on par, and therefore we vote to refuse the application. And I think ultimately we look at what we saw and heard on site as a guide to that. It is not straightforward. It has taken planning officers a long time to reach this point, almost doing some of the hard miles on your behalf, if you like. And we wouldn't be recommending approval at this stage if we felt that that was something we couldn't sustain at appeal, if that makes sense. So a refusal at this point, we feel they've done enough, that would make it an issue for us at appeal. So hopefully, as an officer view, a bit of guidance that may help members in their judgment coming forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hope.
Yeah, I think the noise from dogs compared to any other noise is different. So if you think about the fight or flight response that we've got, if people hear a dog, they initially get that sense coming through them, dogs barking. It's a natural reaction for us. So people will start complaining about these dogs. I guarantee it, and that business will have to move on. And I find that pretty unfair. So if I was to agree, I would be agreeing with caution, because I believe that this is a very important issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments? Councillor Woodhouse, yeah.
Thanks, Chair. I don't know if there's anyone in there who can give the stats, but is anyone here from Stray Aid who can actually say what were the figures from 2023 and 2024 of dogs coming in, and how many of they were actually brought in by either council wardens or by the police?
Don't think there's anyone from Stray Aid here. Don't think anybody's here to answer that question. Councillor Wilkes.
Chair, the majority of dogs that are brought to the site are brought by councils or the police. That's the facility that it offers. I think the bigger question is the timings of that, because obviously during the day when people are out of work, somebody bringing a dog in, you know, is not the same as 3 o'clock in the morning, somebody dropping one off, and that noise then triggering the rest of the kennels. Though that figure, I don't think anybody knows in this room, but what I do know is that most of them are from neighbourhood wardens and the police. If I could just ask, and I know we haven't made a decision yet, but specifically on conditions, regardless of whether we approve or not this application, can we just be clear on which conditions that we're putting in? Because even if it was to go to appeal, those conditions would then still apply if the appeal passed the application. So from my view is that we were going to change the working hours to 8 AM from 7:30. We were going to remove any permitted development rights to put in gates or other access to the new housing, which would be backing onto Gladstone Terrace. And I'd asked that we condition something being brought forward from the developer to provide detail of how they would improve road safety getting across the bus gate. I don't think that was knocked back from officers. I think it was other things like yellow lines where there was a question mark as to whether we could do it. I still think we should condition no loading to be placed on all those areas, or a request to highways to look at doing that, and a request that within a reasonable period of time that double yellow lines are placed into the entrance to the site as and when it's considered appropriate, because obviously you don't put the final layer of the road on until towards the end of a development, but I do think there'll be safety issues there. The one last thing I would request is at some point we do find out what the actual route was that the school officers are basing their less than 2 miles on? Because I feel uncomfortable when I'm getting one view from one place and I don't see the alternative route.
Thank you. Are we able to say anything about conditions now? Yeah.
In terms of the three items, I think the working hours and the PD rights removed, I think they're comfortable. I think we'll take those as a note, and obviously during any appeal process we have to agree a set of draft conditions with anybody at that point. With respect to parking restrictions, we'll have to take that away and maybe look at that with the Highway Authority as to what that actually entails. It may be, for example, no loading is not, whilst it sounds like the right thing for loading children in and out of cars, might not actually be the right thing. It might be more heavy goods vehicles or that type of loading. So that's a remit outside of planning that we simply can't get into. So all we'd be able to do is trigger a delivery of a scheme separately, but that's something that has to be agreed separately under Section 38 of the Highways Act. So we'll have to look at that. I think wasn't there.
Chair, I think we've really, in terms of the 2 mile distance, I think we've explained this as best we can. I appreciate there might be different views in the room. I think that really sits out in terms of, if we're asking the question how officers have come to this, the 2 mile analysis, and you know how we've presented this to, in terms of how we've packed it up in the planning committee report. I'm more than happy to share that evidence with members outside of this meeting, but I don't think it's something which we can really stitch into a planning decision today. If there's a question in terms of the authenticity of the evidence which officers have put forward, I really think that's something that needs to be discussed outside of this committee, Chair.
Thank you. Are we able to move forward on this? Any more comments? Does anyone want to put forward a proposal? Councillor Shulman?
Can we not reserve a decision on this until the questions are answered?
Chair, that's an option for members if they feel that there's some additional information which is required before they can come to a decision on this. The application could be deferred for that information to be sought and presented at the next available committee meeting.
Yes, Mr. Reid.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think just building on what Neil's just said there, Chair, I think obviously there's been a fair bit of debate and some very good questions, I think, Chair, asked in terms of the noise. The point that Councillor Wilkes and Councillor Hope have made about Policy 6 in the plan and how it shouldn't adversely impact adjoining occupiers, as Graham advised, that is very much a material planning consideration. So on Councillor Shulman's point, if there was a motion to defer on the distance point that Councillor Hope and Wilkes has made, it might give us an opportunity to work with the applicant to see if there is an opportunity to provide some more information, some more evidence base to their calculations, which I think I have to say, as the report has flagged up, our environmental health team do accept on balance that those noise readings would be okay. So that might be an opportunity there to bring back further evidence on the noise as well, is my thoughts.
Thank you. Do you want to put forward a motion on that basis?
Chair, move forward proposal to defer until we have the further information that we've requested.
Thank you. That. Sorry, so Kenny, you second it? Yeah, thank you. Just to be clear on the motion, that it's being deferred, the decision is being deferred until further information is obtained on the question of the Section 106 payment and highway safety?
The highways issues and the school issues.
Highway issues and the school issues. Thank you. So if you'd like to vote on the motion, all those in favour? Unanimous. Thank you. Meeting now closed.